Hello my quilting friends, and welcome to this special tip video for the machine quilting block party. This week we learned how to piece our first block, and the next step is to learn how to mark it with our cool quilting design. So let's check out how I mark a block using a light box. So the first step to marking your block is to mark our border line. We're not quilting to the edges of the block, we're going to quilt to 1 inch outside of the center of our block, adding just a little 1-inch border to all edges. So I'm going to just line up my ruler, just using this little 1 1/4 inch quilting ruler. It's one of my favorites for this kind of thing. And I'm marking this line all the way around with a fine line water-soluble blue pen. The reason I like this pen is that it's definitely going to come out, but it produces a really bright blue line for marking this block. Okay, with our border marked, I can line up our quilting diagram. You can find this within the first block pattern. It comes with not only the piecing information to piece this block, it also comes with this awesome diagram. So I'm just going to flip it over and line it up with that outline we just marked. And I'm taping it down because it's just easier to mark the block when they're taped together, the diagram taped to the block. So it's not going to shift and wiggle around. It's going to be perfectly centered up. Okay, so now they're taped together, and I'm going to be using a light box. If you don't have a light box, that's not the end of the world. You don't have to have one, but they certainly can be helpful for this kind of thing. I don't even have, this isn't all even that great of a light box. It's not very bright, but it does really help to just see those lines and be able to mark really clearly. So I'm going to get started marking just the sun. And this is a circular shape. If you happen to have a circle template or something, then you could definitely use that. That will help you draw that really nice round shape, perfectly round shape. But really just, it's a matter of just working slowly around and trying to not draw off the lines. We want to quilt on the lines, we want to mark on the lines. And so for anywhere light, I'm going to be using this fine line water-soluble pen. And basically after quilting each block, I am going to soak them in order to remove the marks, in order to wash out the marks completely. Whenever I'm marking a darker area, such as this orange and red area, I'm going to use a ceramic marking pencil for this area instead. And you can find both of these pencils. They're available at leahday.com. When it comes to marking these darker areas, you can see it is a much more of a challenge to be able to see those darker areas. And for this particular block, I'm actually not going to mark this area because it's filled with a design called sharp stippling that I can easily quilt freehand, and that's definitely open to you. You don't have to mark every single element on your block if you don't want to. But if you start struggling to be able to see through and mark something, try maybe a bright window. Look around your house and see what's available and what you can use to be able to see through your block. Now for these corner areas, I've got basically lines, echoing lines that come out. And for this, I really find it easier to use a ruler. That really helps you get a nice straight line and perfectly lined up with the block. And the outline, we have this kind of a flame. It's called a hot path flame border of this block. And there's two ways to do it. You can mark the whole flame, and that's perfectly fine. So, a little bit time consuming and a little bit tedious. And all it is a wiggly line. That's easy enough to quilt. So what I like to do instead is to just mark it with dots. And so I'm putting a dot at the tip of the flame and a dot at the point where the border meets the block. Basically, at all the tips, I'm just marking that dot. When I get this on the machine, I'll just remember, okay, I'm just wiggling, wiggling, wiggling. It doesn't have to look exactly like this. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be an exact replica. This is just marking out and giving me a placement, a guideline, and a little bit of assistance in placing that within the block itself. The triangles in the corners, you could also mark with dots, but these are small enough. I just go on ahead and draw those in. So definitely take your time. I would absolutely mark the center sun. I think that that's really important to have marked. It's a motif. We want it to look exactly like that. But areas like the sharp stippling, flip it up so that way you can see the design I'm talking about. This sharp stippling design is a repetitive filler design that you can learn how to quilt without marks at all. If you need them, mark it. If you feel like you can quilt it without it, don't mark it. It'll save you some time. Definitely for the straight lines though, I'm going to mark that. I think that that's absolutely necessary. So now that you have some tips on marking your block, let's get our block basted up and ready to machine quilt. So that's it for this video. I really hope that you enjoy learning how to mark your block and a few tips on what you can mark, what you could leave for freehand, what you could maybe use dots in order to have a little bit of assistance in your free motion quilting. Ultimately, I hope you understand you don't have to mark every single thing. But if you need to, definitely do. It can be really helpful, especially when you're just starting out free motion quilting, to have all the little lines in front of you so you can just focus on moving the quilt and making your stitches look really good. Make sure to join us for the machine quilting block party. Click here to pick up the pattern for the first block. Until next time, let's go quilt.